I think it wouldn't be a hard next step for them if something were to happen to blame that on the U.S. and our foreign policy and everything here at home. So no, I don't think it would be a hard next step for them to justify something like that.
I'm trying, yeah, the immigration thing is, and it's almost like they tell us to not believe our own eyes. The government's like, it's not happening. It's like, what do you mean it's not happening? There's just countless videos. Well, I agree with you pretty much in lockstep on those points you brought up. Can I ask you? I'm going to ask you a question on you're talking about freedom of speech, right to bear arms, and on that right to bear arms one, you have a lot of experience with guns. Obviously, they were part of your job for years and years and years. You used them in war. When you hear people, I mean, do you see some of the stuff they say on the media where, a reporter will be like, here's an AR-15. It shoots 30 rounds a second. Or, there's the famous one from a year ago where they claimed one shot from a 5.56 can take a human head clean off. Biden said a 9mm can remove your lungs from your body with one shot. What do you think about people who clearly have no idea what they're talking about, but just love to talk about how guns need to be banned?
Oh, they need to shut the hell up. They talk about disinformation and misinformation. It's like, hey, first educate yourself. Educate yourself, know what you're talking about, and then come to the table to talk about it. That to me, a person like that represents an agenda, right? They could care less about educating themselves. They're sticking to the party line, talking points. They don't really care, and so they're just gonna throw things out there and then accuse everyone else of creating misinformation and disinformation and all those things. But I would tell people, it's like, hey, if you want to talk about something, especially guns in general, great. Let's have the conversation, but at least educate yourself so you know what you're talking about.
I agree 100%. Just for fun, when you were in the military, did you have a firearm that you particularly really liked, or did exchange one for the other? It didn't matter.
When I got to the special mission unit, we had sidearms, and we carried 1911. It was a Caspian frame with some, custom internal parts. Man, I loved that thing. I didn't really shoot a whole lot of pistol up to that point. So having gone through the course and learning how to properly shoot a pistol and everything, man, I just love that 1911 so much. I had an opportunity to buy it back. And one probably around 2009 or 2010. And I passed it up because at the time, like $2,000 for a pistol was a little too much. But looking back now, I like to just kick myself in the ass because, it's like a family heirloom, that you pass down. So I have an affinity for the 1911. So much so that the guys over at Staccato, they had the 2011 and bought the Staccato XL, and that thing reminds me so much of my 1911 that I carried for years. So yeah, I would say the 1911. For me, like an AR is an AR. Yeah, pistols.
I like that. The 1911, especially the real like World War II, the old school ones, they're the coolest. They're the coolest things in the world.
I remember we made the transition from the 1911 to the Glock. I can't remember exactly what year it was, 2007-ish. And so a lot of the older guys, I wasn't so attached to it. In a way, yes, but it was like, hey, you guys need to turn in your 1911s, and that old phrase, you can pry it from my cold dead fingers. some of the older guys at the unit kind of felt that way, and honestly, looking back, it was a bit nostalgic, and I wish we'd at least kept one and kind of went with lock, but didn't turn out.
That's awesome. Is there any? So we've talked a lot about kind of the fears, the pessimists. I don't want to say pessimist outlooks, probably the wrong words, but legitimate concerns about the state of the country. I want to flip the coin on the other side now. What are some things going on that really inspire you and give you hope and optimism for the United States of America?
Well, man, I mean, I still think at our core, we're still all about freedom. there are plenty of American citizens that are concerned about what's going on, um, that are doing good things every day. And it's like my work at SOC-F in a way has kind of restored my confidence in humanity, and seeing people step up and really wanting to help out and contribute with special operations veterans and their families. But it's like on the news, you don't see a lot of good news stories. But every once in a while you'll get one. And so, yeah, there are a lot of good things. I think people are waking up. We still have enough patriotism in this country that people are starting to wake up and stand up. And so there is hope for us, for sure. But, like I heard it said one time, there's no political solution for a spiritual problem. And so my hope is that we'll turn to God, we'll turn to Christ, and let him kind of lead the way on that. But that doesn't absolve us from our personal responsibility to participate, and to stand out and have a voice. But yeah, I'm still confident. There's enough folks here in the U.S. that still love this country and what it stands for, that we can turn this thing around.
I agree with you, and I think, like you talk about the silent majority, I think there's a lot of people who see the nonsense out there and they just think, I don't want anything to do with that. And, you do got to stand up and draw a line in the sand and say, we're just not going to tolerate this. I mean, I live in the Washington, D.C. area. The crime here is insane. I mean, you can't walk down the street without legitimately having to look over your shoulder at all times. I mean, there's shootings, all parts of the city, robberies, carjackings. And I know that a lot of people are frustrated, but they're almost afraid to say anything because they don't want to be accused of, being a bigot or whatever it might be. It's like, yeah, I'd prefer to just not get shot, quite frankly. I'd prefer to have leaders that didn't want people getting shot. So I agree with you that end of the day, I still think there's a lot of good people, but we got to get our stuff figured out for sure. I have just a few more questions here. This has been an awesome interview. I really appreciate your time. You've pulled back the curtain on so many different things. I like to ask guys this. If you're removed, you've been out for a long time, relatively speaking. When you look back, the good, the bad, the trauma, the TBI, the PTSD, all of it, family, good and bad, your wife sticking with you. If you could go back in time to September 11th, when you got the letter to go, shortly after September 11th, when you got the letter to go to selection for the unit you ended up in, would you do it all over again, or would you not have gone?
I'd do it all over again. I would certainly do some things differently. I think the mistake that people make, David, is they look back at their lives and the trauma or, the hard times or whatnot, and they view it as, a negative only. The way I go back and kind of look at the traumas and all the things that I went through, it's a refining process. And the result is where I am right now. And that refining process will continue. Certainly not perfect. Never will be perfect. But, if we can go back and look at those events as shaping, molding, refining events in our lives, that even though they're very difficult to go through in the moment, they actually serve a purpose and forming who we are today. So no, I would go back and do it again.